Mike McCarthy is all up in our business. We got the situation this weekend, Chew, with the Green Bay Packers needing Dallas to beat the Commanders in order to help them get the 6th seed instead of the 7th seed, that, of course, being the Green Bay Packers. And as I have said, I would much prefer a game against the Rams to a game against the Philadelphia Eagles. So people have been like, Mike McCarthy, can Mike McCarthy do us a solid? Can Mike McCarthy get the Cowboys to win that game to help the Packers improve their seeding? And then there is this. Mike McCarthy is being mentioned, Chew, as a potential replacement for Matt Eberflus in the great city of Chicago. Your reaction when you hear that Mike McCarthy's name is being thrown out there as a potential head coach in the Windy City for the Bears?
I love Mike. I've known Mike for 30 years. I think he was a great coach. I think he's a good coach now. I don't think he would be it'd be good for the Packers, but I don't think it'd be a good fit in Chicago. The problem with Chicago, did you guys see that, who's the O coordinator in Detroit?
Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson won't take the job unless Poles is fired because Poles snubbed him last year. So Chicago's just dumb, and we kind of enjoy them being dumb. You know?
Yeah, sure.
Which is fine because hiring Mike McCarthy would be a dumb move.
Wait,
they need someone young, innovative, energetic.
Yeah, none of those things describe Mike McCarthy.
No, not anymore. I mean, you got to give Mike credit. He did win a Super Bowl. He was run out of town by our buddy, but I just think that'd be a bad hire.
Our buddy?
Jen's buddy, specifically.
Yeah, Jen's guy.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Gabe. To the detractors of Mike McCarthy who say that, yes, he won a Super Bowl in Green Bay, but that was on the shoulders of Aaron Rodgers, you say...
he helped build Aaron Rodgers. Do you guys remember Jeff Tedford and what he did in college and the way he taught his quarterbacks? Chewy, I know you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
The crappy, the dumb ear hole thing.
Yeah, I know the release.
You have the ball up by your ear hole instead of, so he had to clean up Aaron Rodgers' mechanics, despite Rodgers not wanting to give him any credit.
And one of the great stories, drop this in there, one of the great stories out of 1265 guys is when Rodgers was asked about changing his mechanic, changing the way he carried the ball. He was like, I haven't changed. Carrying the ball. And you were like, we have eyeballs, sir. We can see your footage from college.
Turns out they didn't burn that footage. It still exists. We can find footage from you playing at Cal.
I bet you some of it is in that Enigma documentary. I bet some of it is in that mockumentary that is on Netflix right now. I bet you could see some of him carrying the ball way up there. That, to your point, Mike McCarthy was instrumental in changing and making him more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, Mike helped build up Aaron to what he became. And look, McCarthy was a really good coach. And he's still, in Dallas, 3 out of the 5 years he's been there, he's won 12 games. And again, you can then point to his postseason success, sure. But the Bears need to have that first step of, I think this would be a good hire for them. I really do. I think that he would be able to, I think he'd be able to get the most out of Caleb Williams. Now, would they have postseason success, Chew? I'm not sure. But he has had success where he's gone. And if you look at this Cowboys team, they haven't given up on Mike. And if Mike were to leave, it'd be on his own volition. He hired a different agent. He, a week or two ago, hired Don Yee, who famously is Tom Brady's agent.
I know Don Yee.
Yeah, so taking a look at the writing on the wall, Chew, he might want out of Dallas. It might not be up to Jerry whether or not he brings him back, but additionally, I don't know if Mike would want to go from the dysfunction of Dallas to the dysfunction of the Chicago Bears.
Because we always talk about this, Chew. There's a finite number of these jobs, right? There's only 32 jobs out there. 32, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just doing the quick math in my head, and we know that there's no such thing as quick math when it comes to Jen, but I digress. There's only so many of these jobs out there. So there is a school of thought that says if you've got one, you don't release it unless you've got another one. I also think that the dysfunction of these two organizations, which is widely reported, on one hand, you have a meddling owner in Jerry Jones who is always going to think that he knows better than all of the people he has put in these positions of power, and that is always going to be a problem. On the other hand, what the bleep is going on in Chicago, right? There are people who believe that as long as the McCaskies own the team, it will always be a dumpster fire. There are people who question the qualifications of Ryan Poles. There are people who question the qualifications of Kevin Warren. And that is 1, 2, 3 above you in the chain of command. At what point, and look, guys, rumors being what they are, there is talk that there are people who are staying far away from the Chicago Bears. I saw a report this morning, I believe it was in The Athletic, that Ben Johnson is actually kicking the tires on Jacksonville. Can you imagine, Shu, a day and age where head coaches are looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Chicago Bears and going, Jacksonville sounds nice. Jacksonville feels like a place where I could win.
Well, with all the openings, I mean, Trevor Lawrence didn't have a great year, but there's still talent there, and I'm surprised Doug couldn't get that out of him. But you know what's crazy? I was just doing, in my hours of show prep, I came across this, and you guys, is Caleb Williams having a better year than Jordan Love?
No. I mean, if you look at the
stats, Gabe. Look at the stats.
If you look at the raw statistics, sure. But if you also pay attention to the number of times they've had like 46 yards at halftime, and then they're completely out of games, and other teams check out, and then it can rack up. Yeah, I know you're looking at numbers. I'm just telling you the reality of the situation. That
what I'm getting at.
There have been a number of games where they're out of it by halftime because they have less than 50 yards of offense because he has struggled.
You don't think there's too much coddling of Jordan Love?
I mean, but what do you want to rip him for? What I mean, I don't think that there's an
highest paid player in the league.
He's not.
Didn't make the Pro Bowl. Well, he was before. I'm just saying that. Are we giving him a pass? Dude, when you're making $58 million a year, I expect you in the top 5.
But
I
Dak Prescott is the top paid quarterback in the league, right?
Yes.
He's the top one.
And he's hurt. Sure, but I've seen it from Dak. Dak was runner-up to the MVP last year.
But Jordan Love beat Dak head-to-head last year. And I know quarterbacks don't go up against quarterbacks, but like when those two teams met in the ring, the Packers are the ones that emerged.
Yeah,
you're only as good as your last game. You're only as good as your last game. And let me just ask you this question. If they get trucked by the Eagles, what are we going to say about this year?
If they get trucked, I think this is a better team than last year. That just wouldn't. Honestly, and if they play the Eagles, I'm not going to predict them to win. But I think this is something that Jason has said all year long. It's a better team, more wins than a year ago. That doesn't get as far.
Well, but also I think you have to look at it from a progress standpoint, right? And getting rid of Joe Barry and replacing him with Jeff Hafley. And I think we all have said the eye test indicates to us that Hafley maybe doesn't have the talent that he needs to run his scheme. He's doing the best he can with what he has. So if you factor in another year of adding more players where he will likely have a say in that personnel, you're taking steps towards being a better defense, right? We have said they're a better run defense than they've been in a while. Let's move on. Across the board, better defense than they have been in a while, I think.
I mean,
top 10 defense.
The two things that they've really improved on this year is against the run and the turnovers. Those are the two things that they've really, they've improved on defensively, and they're much better defense than a year ago.
Do we coddle players?
But
hold on. Let me ask you this, Gabe. Speaking of coddling players, do you know where Rashan Gary is ranked in sacks in the NFL?
Yeah, he said it yesterday. He said it yesterday.
I think it's. I can't remember. I wrote it down. I think it's T26.
T42.
Yeah. I was
and then he's T65.
T42.
Yeah.
What these players are judged by are sacks and tackles for loss.
Yes.
You know how many tackles for loss he had this year?
Right now, I believe he has 7 or 8.
8.
Yes.
Okay, well,
and that's T65.
I'm glad you bring that up because as I'm shuffling through my papers here, Jeff Hafley addressed yesterday Rashan Gary being going to the Pro Bowl. Here's what Jeff Hafley had to say about Rashan Gary being a Pro Bowler, Chew.
You know, I think the one thing when you talk about RG and everybody keeps looking at is probably, and you're probably looking for the same thing, are the pass rush numbers there, right? I don't even know how many sacks he has, but that's probably the question. But that's not the entire game. I mean, we've played pretty good in the run, which we had to do. We have to play good run defense to play good defense in this league. And at least I believe that you do. And I think he's a huge part of that. I think he's disruptive in the run game. He sets edges.
All right, Chewy, let me ask you this.
Okay.
Because you played with quite possibly the best defensive player ever.
Yes.
When people talk about Reggie White, and I know he was good at this, but they talk about his sacks, or do they talk about how good he was at setting edges? Even though Reggie was probably pretty good at setting edges.
Obviously sacks. Yeah, yes.
Like,
obviously sacks.
Like, I
but tackles, Gabe, tackles for losses are measures of the run game.
Yep.
That's what that is. That's the run game, and then the sacks are the pass game. I'm sure Hafley is blown away that Wicks didn't make the Pro Bowl because he's their best blocker. I'm sure he's blown away. This coddling of players is like, that's like when I go back to Frank giving it to Bob McGinn. I'm like, Frank, you sucked. Okay? Just own it.
Well, so going back
that's how you get better.
Going back to the thing you said about Jordan Love, I guess I went into the contract that he signed knowing full well, and the big part of it really starts kicking in next year. He was the product of having to get paid when he got paid. And I didn't think his growth was done. I didn't think the second that he signed that contract, he was suddenly going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I think he has potential to continue to grow. I think he has shown that he's still obviously this year needed to grow. And I think going forward, yes, Chewy, he has to be better. But I wasn't expecting him because he signed that contract to be a top 5 guy this year. I don't think the Packers expected that either. Now, that is going to come because that cap charge is going to exist. That's going to be there. And when you get paid that type of money as a quarterback, you've got to start lifting people around you instead of having people like Josh Jacobs lift you up.
I don't understand, Shu, so please explain to me, what do you mean by coddling?
I mean, if you play like crap, tell them you play like crap. You know? And I know it's a different game than when I played, but you got to play better. You got to be. What were make at the beginning of the season? What were they? Make it to the NFC Championship game and be a potential Super Bowl team. I don't see either of those happening.
Well, but I also think that sometimes it's just not your year. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but they are a really good team. But they happen to run up against a couple of buzzsaws that exist in their division, right? And I said this to Gabe recently, right? Ashton Jeanty is a great running back. You saw what he could do at Boise State. Ashton Jeanty, most years, based on being in conversations with Barry Bleepin Sanders, is your Heisman winner. But he ran up against Travis Hunter, who is like the first player since Deion Sanders to be playing both ways, or Charles Woodson to be playing both ways, and therefore, ipso facto, wasn't your year.
And he even elevated it past that because he played full-time both ways versus just getting a sprinkling in of what those
Does that
guys
take
did.
away what Ashton Jeanty did? You know, so that's the only thing I keep going back to with the Packers. I am frustrated that this season didn't play out the way that you just said we predicted it would or we were hoping that it would. But I also tip my cap to the Minnesota Vikings, who have completely rebuilt, to the Lions, who were the dregs of the league not that long ago, winning 0 games in a season, and have figured out a way to be the top team in the NFC or a top team in the NFC, depending on how that game shakes out this weekend. I don't think that the success of those two teams should be an indictment on the Packers. Do they have things that they can fix and that they need to focus on? Yes.
In order to catch
but
those
I still
teams.
think that they are a really good football team.
Yeah, but all of us didn't think the Minnesota Vikings were going to do diddly-poo this year.
Yeah, and that's
most teams thought they were going to finish last.
That was mostly based on Sam Darnold, wasn't it?
You know what, Jason? Or excuse me. You know what, Chewy? I'll give you this. Sam Darnold's had a better year than Jordan Love.
Yeah.
And Sam Darnold is a Pro Bowler, since we know that means a lot.
Sam Darnold, I think, honestly,
So
Sam
what's going to be the excuse? What's the excuse at the end of the year? Can't be injuries. They were the healthiest team in the NFL.
Oh.
Or one of.
I mean, at the end of the day, Chew.
You're not going to tell me, huh?
At the end of the day, they're not good enough right now. They're just not good enough right now.
No, they're not.
That's the bottom line. They're not good enough right now. That's not to say they can't get there.
What are you going to say next year?
We'll have to wait and see what a year from now what it all looks like. I mean, I think we got. I think you have
to me,
trust.
It just feels a little Chicago Beary because they're losing their best corner.
Yeah, but
we
they've lost him for the
anticipate
most
that, right?
part. I mean, they haven't really had him for most of the year anyway. Yeah, there are things that they have to
They
address.
have to address cornerback.
Yeah,
They have to address that position in the draft and in the offseason.
Do they address D-line, or does this Pro Bowl voting now roll it back like the Bucs did?
No, I mean, he knows. Like, I mean, he saw the game. We're going to go over the all-22, a couple of plays there, Chewy. He's going to see it. Like, he knows the pass rush isn't good enough.
But also, didn't Rashan Gary say he was shocked? Wasn't there a line of, like, when he found out about it, he was
Gotta love
shocked?
honesty.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But, like, as a coach, Chew, you're not going to go up there and go, you know what, Rashan didn't deserve this. Like, expecting that out of Hafley is that's not going to happen.
No, I know. I know
so
that.
he's got to defend it somehow, and that's what he came up with.
It's a wild ride. It's a wild 17 minutes. I mean, I enjoyed it thoroughly, but got a little motion sickness.
I know, but I'm just I'm a guy that moves forward. I'm always moving forward. I'm not looking back. And as of right now, I think their chances to win it all next year are the same as this year.
But you have no idea what they're going to do this offseason.
We have no
idea
if Sam Darnold's even going to return to the Vikings.
Exactly.
Like that,
or Aaron Rodgers goes to the Vikings. We have no idea.
You're trying to manifest stuff now, Mister. I'm looking forward.
I love stirring a pot. Who wants to just sit there and be boring?
No one.
You know what I mean?
No one likes to be boring.
Stir the pot. The pot needs to be. Pot needs to be stirred.
Just to be clear, do you want Mike McCarthy in Chicago or not?
Yes, I do. I do. Because I think in the end it benefits the Packers.
Let's put that on the Jen, Gabe, and 𝘀𝘃 Twitter poll. Mike McCarthy's name is being thrown out there as a potential candidate for the Chicago Bears. Or more accurately, maybe he is interested in the Chicago Bears opportunity. As a Packers fan, would you like to see Big Mike in Chicago leading a team in the division? How you answer that is going to really show us how you feel about Mike McCarthy's coaching acumen at this stage of the game.